Welcome to our discussion of Chapter 7. In this chapter, we will discuss creativity and innovation within organizations. So before we jump into the chapter, let's think about why organizations would care about creativity and innovation. You can pause the video and jot down some notes before we go through the list right here. Some of the reasons organizations value creativity is because creative thinking will enable organizations to keep up with changing markets. Technological advancements are changing what is possible and what consumers expect. And if we're able to creatively use these new technologies and new ideas, we might be better able to respond to changing consumer tastes and retain our market share or possibly even grow it by ensuring customer satisfaction. Being creative and innovative might also help organizations enhance product or service quality, providing products or services faster or at a higher quality. And of course, if we're doing things better at higher quality and higher speed and lower cost, we can also boost profitability. So there are lots of benefits for organizations to make sure that they keep up by integrating creative ideas and new innovations into how they do business. So to summarize, creativity can directly and positively impact organizational effectiveness. Organizations that can learn how to do things better, cheaper, faster can become more effective, more profitable. They can increase the identification of quality solutions to organizational problems. As organizations become larger and compete globally, they are more likely to face more significant and more complex problems that can be solved by creative and innovative ideas. Organizations will be better able to respond to change, for example, changes in consumer tastes or new technologies. And if we're trying to link this back to our discussion of stress, when we enable employees to be creative in how they do their work, we give them an enhanced sense of control. And if you remember in our discussion of Chapter 6, we discussed how lack of control can actually act as a stressor for employees. So employees who are given the opportunity to be creative and innovative regarding the ways in which they do their job have a higher sense of control, which can be very motivating and also reduce experienced stressors. Before we progress into the chapter, it's an important point to distinguish between creativity and innovation. Most people use these terms interchangeably and believe them to mean the same thing. Actually, while they are complementary, they mean different things. Creativity refers to the generation of new and useful ideas. Innovation describes the process of turning those ideas into solutions that we can actually implement in our organizations. So creativity and innovation are not the same. They complement each other. Creativity refers to the identification of new ideas. Innovation is translating those ideas into actual solutions that we can implement. And it's important to recognize that it's not always the same people who are good at creativity and innovation. This is why the innovative process is very often a result of teamwork, in which some people are more creative while other people are more innovative, and by working together, they can identify solutions and turn them into real implementable ideas within their organizations. When we think about creativity, lots of people define creativity in different ways. For example, some people might define creativity as a trait, believing that some of us are simply more likely to be creative, that it's an innate skill that we possess because we are more original thinkers or resourceful or curious or are able to identify new ideas where other people do not see them. If you want to stop the video here and look at the link to the green box example on your As You Learn page, this is an example of how someone looked at an item that we use every day, the pizza box, and identified a new creative and innovative solution to the increasing waste that our society creates by redesigning the pizza box. So this is an example for how creativity might be seen as a trait. This belief that some of us simply have this innate ability to be more creative. Other people view creativity as a cognitive skill and ability, right? So ability is innate, skill is acquired. We discussed that when we discussed individual differences. And so the idea when we view creativity as a cognitive skill, we believe that some people are able to develop their thinking and engage in divergent thinking so that they are able to see things differently. Those individuals also have the linguistic ability to describe their ideas to others. Of course, creativity might also be seen as a behavior, right? The actions that people engage in to create new things or come up with new ideas, developing something new. And finally, seeing creativity as a process with definite steps. For example, many people would define creativity as a complex process that involves different phases or different stages, right? First, we identify the problem. Then we make guesses as to how we might solve the problem. We might propose some hypotheses as to possible solutions to the problem. We test those hypotheses and we are able to communicate our ideas to others. The integrative view sees creativity as all of these together, a process in which individuals with creative skills, creative abilities, so a trait, an innate trait, and cognitive skills engage in behaviors by following a specific process that enable us to develop valuable solutions to problems in our organizations or identify useful new products or services for our customers. Of course, it's not just individual characteristics that matter. I might be very skilled in articulating my ideas, so the cognitive skill. I might have the innate ability to see opportunities in different places, but it's the environment in which I work that is also going to influence the degree to which I am creative. And here we look at the organizational constraints that can enhance people's ability to be creative, right? So the integrated view recognizes that we are all potentially creative and that we can all learn new skills that can enhance our creativity, but creativity doesn't happen in a vacuum. We have to have the right environmental conditions that will enable us to become creative, right? So we need to be working in an organization that has a supportive culture and structure in which we are able to actually be creative, because creativity depends very much on the individual's motivation to actually become creative. I might be very creative as an individual, but because of the organizational environment in which I work, I might not be motivated to contribute to the organization's performance by sharing my ideas with the organization. So we want to try as organizational leaders to create the right environmental conditions. For example, Google has implemented something that they call organizational slack. Employees might have 90% of their day determined by their employer. We expect you to accomplish A, B, and C, but 10% of your time, we will allow you to pursue your ideas, your projects, so that you have the space, the time to become creative. You are intrinsically motivated to be creative when the right organizational conditions exist. If we have jobs that are very structured with a lot of top-down directive as to how we should do our jobs, we are a lot less likely to be creative. So it's important to recognize that creativity happens in a vacuum, that happens in a context, not in a vacuum, and that we want to create the right organizational conditions and the right types of jobs to make sure that our people are indeed creative. And if you want to pause the video here and look at the link on your As You Learn site to the liter of light example. And this is an example how actually scarcity of resources can enhance creativity and innovation. Before we discuss some of the things that organizations can do to enhance creativity among employees, let's look at the creative process in more detail. It's important to understand that the creative process is not a flash of insight, right? Think about those cartoons where you have a light bulb going off over somebody's head to indicate that they have just come up with this brilliant idea. This is not usually the case. Creativity usually happens as a result of a sequential process with clearly identifiable steps. The first step is preparation. In this step, we prepare to address an organizational problem. So in this stage, it's very important for us to dedicate some time to carefully think about the problem. What is the problem? What needs to be done? What are some alternatives that we can consider? Who can we talk to about this problem to generate more ideas? So here in the preparation stage, we consciously gather and examine information to define the problem as broadly as possible and generate as many ideas as possible. Right? I like to use an example to demonstrate how this happens. So, for example, you own an apartment building in a large city, an older building. The tenants are complaining that the elevator is slow. What is your problem? You have disgruntled tenants who are threatening to leave their apartments and go elsewhere because the elevator in the building is too slow. If this is how you think about the problem, then the solution that you're likely to come up with is, well, I need a new elevator. But if you try to define the problem more broadly and talk to more people and observe the tenants while they are waiting for the elevator to try to get a better understanding of the problem, you might say, the problem is not really the slow elevator. The problem is that the tenants are bored while they're waiting for the elevator. Let's put a TV set, or let's put a mirror by the elevators where people are waiting, so that they are not as bored and therefore will not be disgruntled about the elevator being slow. So this is just a random example to demonstrate how in the preparation stage, the objective is to define the problem as broadly as possible and try to identify as many potential solutions, talk to as many people as possible. Once we have done that, we have collected a lot of information. At the concentration stage, we will focus on trying to solve the problem by actually dedicating some resources to testing the different solutions. We could talk to experts, we can do a cost analysis of the different solutions, of their potential effectiveness, but in this stage, we would need to dedicate some resources, either time or money or both, to assess the different solutions that we have generated. These are the two more intentional parts of the creative process. In the incubation phase, we will step away from the problem, and let our subconscious mind work, so to speak. In this process, we might order and reorder the ideas. We might think about different solutions, right? So make some psychological distance so that we can actually think analytically and carefully about our different alternatives. And once we have been able to do that, and that usually takes some time, we are likely to reach the illumination stage in which we have some insight as to the best course of action to pursue. And of course, then we need to test whether that course of action actually works. So creativity is not just going to happen. It's a process that requires resources, time investment, commitment to being open to considering lots of different approaches, and very often is a collaborative process because we are likely to benefit from input of lots of people with lots of different areas of expertise, right? So it's very often a collaborative process among a diverse group of people. And here, diverse does not necessarily mean to age, gender, race, or ethnicity. It could also imply diverse in terms of functional expertise or functional areas in the organization or hierarchical levels in the organization. One important aspect about the creative process is the importance of recognizing that it can very often be a chaotic process. A chaotic process is a mix of two words, right? Chaos and order. And we have to embrace that the creative process is sometimes somewhat chaotic within the order that we try to implement. Maybe we've had an illumination, we've tested the idea, it doesn't work as we expect, and we have to go back to the concentration stage to rethink this through. So this is not a very clean, linear process in all situations. It can very often involve some chaos. This is why we refer to the creative process as chaotic. If you want to have an organizational example of how this works, you can watch the video link on your As You Learn page on how Procter & Gamble enhanced its creativity, where they invested resources, how they looked at mistakes or problems, and how they were able to boost their creativity by following this process. Of course, not all creative solutions will be ground-shattering inventions. A lot of times, some of the innovations that we implement in organizations are simply adaptive rather than radically innovative. And so we look at creativity along a continuum. Some innovations can be small tweaks to the process or to the problem. And so adapters are likely to find better ways, faster ways, cheaper ways of doing things. They're looking at what are we doing right now and how can we make incremental improvements to existing practices, either in our manufacturing or our services. And so they will look at ways to cut cost or enhance the way in which we meet customer needs in terms of the quality of the product or the speed of delivery and things like that. On the other extreme of the creativity continuum are innovators. Those people are big thinkers. They might generate very creative solutions that are very change-oriented or very radical or very different. If you took the time to watch the Procter & Gamble video, a great example of that is the Tide dry cleaners product that Procter & Gamble came up with. Procter & Gamble, their core business is manufacturing goods for the public, retail. But the Tide dry cleaners business model is actually a completely different business model, radically innovative for Procter & Gamble, in which they came out with the chain of dry cleaners as a franchise business. So they are the franchisors. And this is a very different business model, very different business idea from their core business. It's an example of radical innovation, something completely new to enhance their portfolio. Whereas other innovations that Procter & Gamble might have had were more on the other end of the spectrum, more adaptations rather than radical innovations.